Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. All right, guys. Thank you, Mr. Producer. We are back, and I'm joined by two amazing people, Timothy Grossman, and we get to meet Darlene today. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you for having us.
So, Timothy, let me start with you. Maybe you can just reintroduce yourself to the audience and then introduce us to Darlene next to you.
All right. Well, I'm Timothy Grossman, founder and co-owner of A Source of Wellness. We are a holistic wellness company based out of Lexington, Kentucky, and we provide Reiki treatment sessions, Reiki classes, as well as incorporating mindfulness and also sound healing or healing sound therapy through crystal bowls and whatnot.
And that's Darlene's specialty, right? I mean, that's where Darlene shines, right? Nice to have you, Darlene.
Thanks for having me here. I mean,
tell me a little bit about energy healing. About the bowls.
Help me out, Tim. I have a hard time explaining things.
Okay. Well, so the what we found with healing sound or sound itself is that it creates entrainment, right? So when you listen to type of music, it creates a mood. Yeah. When you listen to certain frequencies, it creates a shift in the way we perceive things. And so healing sound, necessarily the way we do it, works to create that alpha state so that people can more easily fall into meditation. A lot of people say, oh, I've got a busy mind. I think too much. I can't. And the more you struggle against it, the more it takes prominence. So what you do is you use this sound and it kind of just drowns out the thinking mind. And so we're stilling the fluctuations in the mind with the sound. And then everything else, whether it's guided or whether we're just sitting and holding that space, that's where the magic takes place. Would you agree?
I would agree, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. Now, I know, Timothy, you just returned from Chicago. What were you doing there?
So I was in Chicago, and I was studying with a gentleman, beautiful, amazing guy. His name's Franz Stein, and he is the co-founder of the International House of Reiki. And he studied with Hiroshi Doi, and he is a member of we talked about this last week.
The Western style, right?
Well, the Japanese style, yeah.
Okay.
So learn,
the Western just really, style.
Yeah, I primarily practice Western style, but the Western style incorporates the Japanese elements. That's why we call it Asui Holy Fire Reiki, because the Asui elements are always there and present, even though the practice or the Holy Fire was introduced in 2014 as an evolution of that process. So I sat with him. It was an amazing time. Just a dynamic speaker, and it really provided some validation to some of the thought processes I had and the philosophies I had coming into and working with, that this is something that really is a consciousness shifting practice, and that with practice you do begin to open up and you begin to have what we call the great bright light of the self, of the true self. It just expands. So then now you take that into every aspect of your life. And it was great really getting down to what were the practices that Asui Sensei had taught, how they had investigated and uncovered them over time. Some of the more esoteric concepts, the Japanese meditations that we talked about. This is like, wow, it really overlays like with, they call it Joshin, it's called Joshinho. And you breathe into the belly. And as you breathe into the belly, then you begin to expand or feel like you're breathing out of your skin. So as you breathe in, you follow the breath into the belly. On the exhale, you're breathing out. And so this is also consistent with some of the vagus nerve breathing that we do within the belly that we've learned through trauma-informed facilitation. He's like, yeah, there's a direct overlay. We just call it something different because it comes from, So yeah, it was really neat. Amazing people in that class from all walks of life. He had like 18 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
And
did you guys just kind of pick each other's brain and how was the format? Were you guys in a classroom setting? Were you in some kind of tell me more about it. This is interesting.
yeah, yeah. So we sat in a circle and we walked through different chants, which is mantras, which we call Juman, which if you like ever heard of on YouTube, you hear Om,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's the vowels, right? And we worked through that and we did that for like 15, 20 minutes. And then we just sat in that space. We did the same thing with like some of the practices of we call them Reiju, initiations, attunements. We worked through that multiple times. I think I did like there's 25 of these things we did over the 3 days. And it was really neat. And, it was a master class. So it was more on expanding the philosophy as well as the position of, I don't like to use the word Reiki master because you don't really master Reiki. It masters you. It's a process where you become more in tune with the spiritual practice, if you will. And yeah, so it was really neat, amazing philosophies. And we talked about this, and I've read about this. Like you go to Japan, and he says, "Oh, I'm enlightened. Nothing bothers me." And so they find something to poke at. Because really, I mean, we're all enlightened beings, yeah. It's just how many layers are covering the lampshade. The light's always been there. But as you put something over it and put something over it and put something over it, then it feels dimmer, but it's not. So then we begin to peel back the layers. And that's also the practice of Reiki, right? That's how it creates healing. It's not just a hands-on practice, a hands-on thing that you do. It's a hands-on, hands-off, or just a way of being that you radiate. And I think the misconception that, oh, we're healers. Well, no, we're holding space for each person to heal.
You're like the liaison between the universal or whatever you call it, right?
Yeah.
And just giving you the tools to help. You're the middle guy.
Yeah. I guess the middle anchor point between, because there is no you or I. It's the conception of separation is more just like a what do you call it? I won't say it's an illusion because it seems very real, but it's we're all interconnected. And then when you talk about interconnected, interdependent, the next step is interbeing.
Okay, what's the difference between that?
So if you're interdependent, we all depend on each other through various systems, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And, this creates a interdependency and you can look at this in the macro, the micro, macro, or meso levels of society, even in your family systems. And then when you talk about, interdependent, we have certain dependencies, then interconnected is the connectedness, even with people that we're not dependent on. And that what Thich Nhat Hanh said was that, there's a sense of inner beingness where there is no separation. There is no you or I. Everything is one. Energy is all throughout existence. You're breathing what you think is just air. It's clear, you can't see it, but there are molecules within that are energy. Consciousness is energy. The body is made up of molecules and quantum particles and atoms that is energy. So the idea of separation is only kind of like an illusion based off of our five senses.
I see. Okay.
Yeah,
that's a good explanation.
Yeah. And as we talked about distance last time, it's like what happens over here happens over there. So there is no distance really. It's the idea that and we were talking about this, the time is not linear. It feels linear, but it's more like it's cyclic. Rotations around the sun, rotations each day. The sun does its thing around the moon the moon does its thing around the earth each month, which creates a cycle. So everything is really just a cycle. And I know it sounds very esoteric, but when you settle into a space that you're able to really feel, see, and sense that perspective, then going to a hotel and not having hot water in your shower, it's not that big of a deal. It's
right.
like, okay, what is this teaching me now? That happened, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, I see. I'm sensing that. Timothy, you told me throughout our conversations that Reiki has this incredible integrity where it's not really changed from the person they learned it from and the person they learned it from. Do I have that right? Where it's basically the same. I asked that question because when you're sitting around with other experts and this gentleman that you were telling me about, um, is there anything that you didn't know? Was there something new or a different spin on things, or is that not applicable in Reiki? If
No,
you can
I think
understand it.
yeah, you learn something new. So each teacher is going to teach their level of training, but also they're going to teach based off of their lived experience and philosophy and how it has worked within their space. The thing I look at is that okay, well, the tradition and the parameters of what is a Sui Reiki and what is that energy, if you want to call it energy, right? That has stayed very consistent. Now, there are some things that have been added, in the West, or things that, like the chakra system. That was never a part of the Japanese system. They only looked at the three haras. But if you superimpose the chakras on the hara and the heart and the mind, the three diamond system, it's the same thing.
It's the same thing. Okay.
But we have to be careful to understand that this is not the original practice. Just as like the meditations, those are the original practice. You bring them in, give them credit for where they come from. Also, be truthful about how things have evolved and where that comes from. And so I'll say that I think there's an expansion of the energy of Reiki. Like there is a more profound sort of effect that's coming through. It feels like there's a lot of an amazing amount of love and compassion coming through, a sense of peace that's coming through, a sense of empowerment and guidance that's coming through. And I see that particularly in, the holy fire practice. But I think that it is a pure energy that has unlimited potential, and we're only tapping into the very smallest parts of that at this time.
Gotcha. Now,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. And how did it affect? Because I know you told me that you can do Reiki on yourself, right?
Yes.
Did that come up? Did you find any new wrinkles in that, or some different techniques? Or tell me about that topic, because I think that's great. You do that every day, I believe.
Yeah. Typically every day, it's like a way of being, a beingness, and that was also something nice to really confirm from the Japanese perspective. It's a way of being. So yeah, we self practice, but just like anything else, it's very effective to have somebody else provide a treatment session for you. And I did learn a lot. I learned about three types of reiju, or initiation, or it's still that Reiki energy that's coming through that Franz had taught about. Like there was a formal practice, a less formal practice, and then a just being. Right? Some people need to have something done to feel like they've received something, and so there's ways that works. Now, the similarities to that is that in holy fire, we do not necessarily do something to someone to initiate them in. We lead them through a meditation. This meditation is very short. And then the consciousness of God, the Holy Spirit, however you want to call it, comes through and works directly with that person on a deep level. And so throughout that 2 minutes of my leading and guiding into that, and then allowing my own energy and ego to be put to the side and just letting the process take place, the students receive what they need to become aware that they're able to use or utilize or access the level one. And then the level two, we speak on those and what is the difference there with, we talked about distance and how that works. You learn that in level 2. And we speak and I've got a lot greater insight from Hiroshi Doyen Franz's perspective on just how each one of those processes, it increases the true great bright light of the inner being of the person. And that carries forward in the master classes. Can I put you on the spot, Darlene? Just a little bit.
I guess.
Okay. When you took your 1 and 2 training, as compared to before that training, how did you, what perceived differences did you see in your way of being or your daily life?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess before I started the 1 and 2, I was suffering from major depression, PTSD, excuse me, and a lot of chronic pain. When I started taking the 1 and 2, I noticed a decrease in the mental health status, and I became more aware of when I was getting depressed or having symptoms of PTSD, and then I was able to use Reiki to kind of not manipulate, but be able to change how my thinking process was. And as far as my master class goes, I think almost every day has been more of a positive day than a negative day.
Wow, that's awesome.
As we went through we call them initiations and holy fire. It's not, it's just something. But when you went through each attunement or initiation or ignition, did you, what was that like for you?
Honestly, it opened my eyes just to be able to see the world differently than where I was.
More positive, Darlene?
Oh yes, a lot of positivity.
And how's it affected you since then, as far as your showing up in life?
Honestly, I enjoy life at this point, and hopefully it stays that way.
That's awesome. Wow.
Continues, yeah.
Wow, that's something special. I mean, because depression is such a real thing, and your attitude now, I assume, is a 360.
It is lots.
That's so awesome to hear. And what do we attribute that to, Timothy? Is it this knowledge? Is it the getting the inner self? Why has she changed so much?
So I think what happens is, I think that there is a spontaneity in how, as you receive these initiations or these attunements or placements or ignitions, however you want to call them, it widens and deepens the channels and allows you to, through the meridian systems, through the 3 diamonds, through the chakras, and it creates a greater access, but it also connects with what you might call the soul and spirit, and, to the source of all that is, to everything around us. And what that does is that it helps, we don't get rid of the ego. We heal those unhealed parts, and those show up. And sometimes it's emotional. Sometimes it's just a lot of love coming through. Sometimes you want to lose your mind and really, like I said, things make you angry, but then something comes over you and you're like, you just become silent. And so it works spontaneously to continue to clarify, heal, and empower and guide. And as you follow that guidance, what you find is that your life is in more alignment. Things fall away that weren't really helping you in the first place, that you were holding on to because that's the only thing you knew, and new things open up. And that's why we say you don't master Reiki, you allow the practice to master you, not what you do, but you have to practice, right? You have to commit yourself on some level to wanting to, embrace this way of being. And then, like the precepts, just for today, I'm not going to anger, I'm not going to worry, I'm going to be grateful. I'm going to be true to my way of my being, to be kind to all things. You may have to go through this in your head several times a day as things come up, and just remember that one thing. And it's okay, because as you're entraining yourself, the access, it's beautiful. It's like, I don't think in the history of mankind that this level of mental, emotional, spiritual connection has been present and available to anyone who wants it. And it's okay if you don't want it. It's okay to be exactly where you're at. Exactly where you're at in each moment is perfect. You know,
I see. Now, from a beginner's perspective, would it be as I know I'm simplifying it, but do you think Darlene had a block in any of the chakras? Is can that cause the depression, PTSD? Is a block in the chakras or
yeah.
in the diamond you talked about?
Yeah, the triple. Yeah, so what happens is like the sense is that there are maybe not blockages, because if you're, but stagnations or we call it trauma is held in the body, right? So those traumas, those stagnations, those imbalances, what happens is that they it creates either people who have like a very overactive root chakra, if you will, or overactive sense of when it's balanced, it is you feel very stable, very grounded, very connected. It can also move in the direction of feeling very competitive, very tribalistic, very you versus me, very all of that.
Uh-huh.
And then if it's overactive, it can feel that. If it's underactive, you feel no connection. You feel completely ungrounded. You feel like you have no stability, and it circles into a place of fear. And then as you move up, that manifests in different ways with the emotional space, the sense of ego, how you love people, how you speak your truth, how you perceive things, and your overall connectedness. So I think that, yes, we all carry something that has happened to us in life, and or just our personalities, and or the environment we're in. Yeah.
It seems like you're a lot clearer.
Yeah. So it all becomes clear. It becomes clear over time, and as you're able, right, to make those micro adjustments, because we can't change on a dime and do a complete 180. And if we do that, it usually doesn't stick.
Right. Yeah, great point. You got a bunch of people that have written in here, and in the last couple of minutes, Mr. Producer, can we do one? Awesome. Okay.
We have Adriana in Long Island, and she wants to know, can Reiki and sound therapy work together to provide the best healing?
Good question.
I'll leave this one to you, Darlene.
Yes, this is actually my expertise. When I do the sound therapy, I integrate Reiki into that. So the Reiki is just flowing through the clients who are with us. I also have, but I use my intuition to kind of use my bowls to sense where people are having troubles. Like if they're having emotional issues at that point, I can use because my bowls are chakras. They go by the chakras, and they actually have notes too. So if I feel that somebody's having some emotional stuff come up, I'll use that certain bowl to help with that.
Wow, that's neat. Now, are the bowls different colors like the chakras?
They're actually all white. That's only because it carries sound better. But inside the actual bowl are the colors of the chakra and the actual chakra symbols themselves.
I didn't even know that. Wow.
And that's I actually do use I use LED lights to actually use the colors, and the lights itself bring out the sound a lot better as well.
How interesting, Darlene. Really cool. Guys, this has been a great show as always, but we're at I'm sorry I didn't get to everybody, but we're going to keep them, and don't worry, I'm not ignoring you. We just run out of time. Timothy, thank you. Darlene, thank you. Let me give you guys the last word. Anything you want to leave us with, and then once again, tell us how to get a hold of you. Let me start with Darlene, and then Timothy, I'll have you have the last word. Darlene, if there's anything you want to leave us with.
Well, I just appreciate being on the show.
Me too. I'm glad you came by. It's always good to hear from Timothy, and now I get to meet some people on his team. So cool. Timothy, let me give you the last word and tell us how to get a hold of you, please.
Yeah, I'll just say that, the path to healing begins with each of us. And it's a decision. And there's many, many ways. So a source of wellness is a way to move in that direction. And so, yeah, we just, with what we provide, and also if you have other interests, we may know or be able to provide some direction that way, reach out at a sourceofwellness.com. info@asourceofwellness.com. Feel free to reach out via text, 859-202-1771. And we would love to be able to walk with you. We're not gurus. We are partners in the process, right? And so I think that's important to make that distinction. And I just thank you for having us, KC. Thank you for the questions. And I look forward to next week.
Yeah, me too. And pleasure to meet you, Miss Darlene. And guys, we will be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you can now listen live on the MyTuner Radio and online Radio Box apps for iOS, Android, and the Amazon App Store. Or check us out online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com or search Podcast Business News Network on onlineradiobox.com/US so you don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.